more minutes.
Give her another minute.
Hey, Kim. Oh, Dakota was coming.
I don't see any reason to postpone. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Heritage Preservation Board on February 5th, 2018 at 6:32. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Terrapini,
Here.
Mrs. Johnson, Miss Johnson, not here. Mr. Bolten,
Here.
Miss Page,
Here.
Miss Bean.
And we do have 3 members present just for the board, for the applicants. Our quorum is 3. What also requires that all 3 have to vote in one way or the other for that. So if at some point there's a concern, you think that you wouldn't have 3 votes for approval of your application, you can request a continuance to the following month. So I'm not suggesting that there's a problem. I just want to let you know, give you fair warning to that effect. And if we get into that situation, then we'll handle it as it comes. We're now going to open the floor for public comments. If there's anyone here that wants to speak on something that's not on the agenda. Okay, I guess everybody is here for an item that is on the agenda. Our first item of business is approval of the minutes from our last meeting on January 8th, 2018. I have a couple of revisions. Does anyone have any other revisions?
I do not.
I do have a couple. And I only say this because I think it's really important that the reasons as well as the decision are shown in our minutes. It's a historical document. So on page 4, this is under the board discussion for the application 101 South Pinellas Avenue, Tarpon Springs Cultural Center. Feelings are really not what we base our decision on, so I would suggest that the second sentence be revised such as this. However, she noted that the applicant did not evaluate the possibility of repairing rather than replacing the windows, and this is the new part, which is inconsistent with the Secretary of Interior's guidelines and the city's design guidelines. Again, to explain what our thought process was on the application. And then the second item, again, for historical purposes, under board comments, the second paragraph, Ms. Wagner, I believe we all agreed, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Wagner too, I believe we agreed that you would publish the agenda by Wednesday prior to the meeting.
Did.
Okay, I think we should note that. And then the third item, Mr. Bolten inquired, as did I, about the status of the design guidelines, and Ms. Lemons responded that the RFP for the consultant for the design guidelines would be presented to the HPB for review prior to issuance. So I don't want to lose track of that topic. So I'd like to add, there's a motion to that effect. There's 3 revisions.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as revised by Chairman Terrapini.
Second? Second?
Chairperson.
A second.
Second by Ms. Page, a motion by Mr. Banther. Any further discussion? Any further revisions? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Approval of minutes are approved as revised. I understand, and Michelle, maybe you can explain, Ms. Prodermitis has resigned from the board?
Correct. Ms. Prodermitis resigned from the board for outside obligations. Takoa Bean has offered to move from an alternate seat to a sitting seat, but that hasn't been approved by the Board of Commissioners yet, so that's where we stand right now.
So at the last meeting, we had elected Ms. Prodermitis as chairman and elected myself as vice chairman. So I guess what we're saying is we need to elect a new chairman.
Correct.
And then Ms. Bean's status as an alternate or regular member is really not for this board to decide, it's for the commissioners to decide that. So.
Correct.
Okay. I'll entertain a discussion.
I'll make a motion. The chair will hear it.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to move Ms. Terrapini from the vice chair position to chair, and Mr. Bolten, myself, to vice chair if I can make that nomination or not.
Well, let's just do it through nominations, and then we can, instead of a motion, practice, as we typically do for the chair seat. So I would then just call for any nominations for chairman of the board. And you wanted to
I
nominate
nominate Ms.
Ms.
Terrapini as chair.
Okay, any seconds?
Second.
Okay, any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So now we have a vacant seat for vice chair. So any nominations for vice chair for the board?
I would like to nominate Mr. Bolten for vice chair for the board.
Any, in a second?
Second?
Oh, you
Can-
can't.
I can't
Well, I guess you
second.
can
She's
second it. Yeah,
chair,
you can
so-
second
Has
it.
to second
That's fine.
because
So
I
who's gonna
can't.
do it
Yeah,
second?
that's true. It's always fun with a three-person board at this point. Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. So we now have Chairman Mrs. Terrapini and Vice Chair Mr. Bolton.
Thank you. All right, moving on, both of the cases tonight are quasi judicial, so I would ask the attorney to swear in the witnesses and discuss the procedure we're going to use for the meeting tonight.
Certainly. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Heritage Preservation Board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest this evening? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak this evening, if you could please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth? Oh, we got one more. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So sworn.
It seems like we're a very formal board. We're not. We're just here to hear your application. We do have some formal processes to go through, which we've just done that. What we usually do is hear the staff recommendation first and kind of describe the application. And then the applicant will have as long as you need to explain what you want to do, and then we might have some questions for you. So with that, Ms. Wagner, if you would give the staff review and that recommendation.
Ms. Chairman, if you could just please read the application number.
I'm
for the
sorry,
record.
sure. Our first case is application 18-05, 116 North Ring Avenue, Jessie's Garden, and it's for new construction of a garden shed on a community garden, and it's a vacant lot.
Okay, application 1805. The applicant is requesting a certificate of approval to erect a prefabricated 8-foot by 12-foot wooden garden shed with shingle roof on the vacant lot approved for use as a community garden at 116 North Ring Avenue. Since this lot was donated to the city of Tarpon Springs, the following actions have occurred. A certificate of approval number 1649 it permitted the demolition of a contributing altered structure and shed that were determined to be damaged beyond repair. Resolution 2017-01 was passed and adopted granting conditional use approval for the use of the lot as a community garden. The City of Tarpon Springs entered into a license agreement with Tarpon Springs Community Gardens, Inc., a Florida not-for-profit corporation. In Item 6 of that agreement, the city permits the licensee to purchase and arrange for installation of a garden shed as approved through the Heritage Preservation Board and the Technical Review Committee. A fence permit was issued in July of 2017, and in January of 2018, representatives from Tarpon Springs Community Gardens, Inc. met with city staff, economic development, planning and zoning, and public works to determine the most suitable location for the proposed garden shed in the context of the overall layout of the community garden. The proposed garden shed was sited near the center of the lot with the idea of creating a centralized gathering space as a focal point centered around a mature shade tree in a pocket park-like setting. The shed is well outside all required yards. No driveway or parking spaces are proposed. The proposed garden shed is 8 feet wide by 12 feet deep, approximately 9 feet tall, and 96 square feet. The garden shed style was chosen from 6 available styles because it features a window next to the door on the front of the building, creating a more compatible facade than those shed styles with only solid doors. Staff recommends approval of the application for a new garden shed on the vacant lot at 116 North Ring Avenue for the community garden, and the applicant will be responsible for obtaining all required permitting.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Would the applicant like to come forward and explain your application and give us some information?
Okay, I don't know exactly what you need. I think she was pretty clear. We are a community
Your
garden.
name, could you state your name and address for the record,
Okay,
please?
sorry. Mariflor Colon Cremoni. I'm at 1127 South Point Alexis here in Tarpon. Okay. And what do you need to know?
Can you just maybe just explain to us? I mean, I think we probably know, but just a little bit of information about why you wanted to put a shed on the property.
Okay, we are a community garden, which means people will be coming into the space, and we don't want people to be having to drag all their tools. So a shed would provide a location that will be locked for us to keep community tools so that they don't have to drag everything back and forth. You know, some of our people will be quite capable of carrying tools, but some will be elderly, possibly handicapped. Maybe they have their kids with them. They don't need a shovel too, or a wheelbarrow and hose and things like that. So it would be a good, well, it's a shed. It's where you keep these things in. It will be locked. Members will be able to access, but it's not going to be open for everybody to come in and take shovels and bury their near and dear or anything like that. So it's just a shed for a garden, like you would have in your garden.
I'm just kind of curious. I don't really understand how. Can you explain how the community garden would work? Do people
Okay,
have a plot, or do they? How does that?
Yes, what it is that people have to be members, and a member comes and we're going to have instructional, educational programs. We're still getting there, but we're going to do that. And then people who want to garden because they prefer to do it in a community type setting, or they don't have a place wherever they live, they will then be able to lease a plot 10 by 4 for a minimal cost per year. And that is where they would garden. And then this shed will be, like she said, in a central location so that nobody has to go too far with the tools to get to their raised bed. We're not supposed to call them plots. We have been told people of a certain age take exception to that. So raised bed, and then they will then use the tool, clean it, and put it back. That's how it works.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments for the applicant? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor or opposed to this application?
Lindell Zell, 1706 Palomino Drive. And we're very excited about this whole process of being able to provide a community garden for this town. Many of the towns around here do have community gardens. We're probably going to have about 30 individual frames. And this is all organic. And we're excited because from so far, our members are families and some people who are retired. So it's a real mix of individuals who are involved in this. And we have a board, and we're about 25, 30 members, but we're getting people involved in this all every day, every week, I should say. So
Thank you so much.
that helps you.
Is there anybody else that'd like to speak in favor or opposed to this application? Thank you. Okay, the only thing I just wanted to state, I mean, I think what you've got using a wood building. It's a very good positive. I mean, that's the material that would have been used, in the historic district. I like the window. I like the pitch roof. I think you made a good choice. But remember that is part of the application. That's basically the condition. It needs to be built or purchased, the same item and not make any changes to it. Any other questions or comments?
I just think it's an exciting thing for the community, and I'm really pleased with the structure that you guys chose. I think it suits the community, the area that it's found in, and I'm excited for you guys.
Any other comments? Are we ready for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as submitted.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval of the application as submitted. Is there any other further discussion by the board? Roll call, please.
Ms. Page,
Yes.
Mr. Bolten,
Yes.
Mrs. Terrapini.
Yes. And the motion passes 3-0. Congratulations, you're approved. And thank you for coming to the board, and good luck with the garden.
You can also apply.
Okay. Oh,
Teach gardening too.
thank you so much. Our second case is application 18-06. It's 109 South Spring Boulevard. Repair and replace the siding of a contributing altered structure. It's a single-family home. Ms. Wagner?
Application 1806, the applicant is requesting a certificate of approval to repair a single-family home contributing but altered at 109 South Spring Boulevard. The applicant is seeking to repair rotten siding, some of which is wood and some of which is weatherboard, with replacement siding that replicates what must be removed. The structure exhibits a mix of siding materials including wood, weatherboard, and asbestos, all applied horizontally. The asbestos siding will remain undisturbed. Large sections of wood and weatherboard, however, must be replaced as the materials have rotted to the point that water intrusion threatens structural damage to the residents. The proposed siding replacement is the minimum work necessary to adequately maintain the structure at this time, and no structural work or change in fenestration is proposed. Staff recommends approval of the application for the replacement of damaged siding with like materials. Applicant is responsible for obtaining all required permitting.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Before we go to the applicant, on this exhibit number 5 that has the photograph, can you just describe which of the siding is to be replaced?
So what you see there behind the ladder, it looks like it might be yellow and there's a window in the center of it.
Yes, ma'am.
That is replacement weatherboard. This was sort of found in progress. The applicant did not realize that he had purchased a home within the historic district. He had no idea what he was getting into.
I see. And are they going to add a cornice piece here? Because if not, you can just get water right into the...
This was taken in progress, so I'm sure that the intention is for it to be finished, but the applicant will be able to speak to that.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant. Any other questions for the board members before we open it up?
I have a question. On a normal structure outside of the historic preservation, if an entire structure is to be, or this much change is supposed to happen, would there have to be a permit for that?
Over $500, he did need to seek a permit,
Okay.
and found out, like I say, in progress.
So for any building within the city, 500 or more would need a permit.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thanks.
$500 or $500 for
$500 worth of
value of work?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank-
All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
I'm Nick Petrantoni at 109 South Spring, and she pretty much explained everything. In the corners, we are going to do, but we stopped everything.
I see.
So
I assume that maybe you stopped
Yeah,
work because
I
of that, but I just
stopped
want to make
everything.
sure that you were going to go back and do that, because otherwise all that nice new siding you
yeah,
will be for naught. So, well, we appreciate you being in the historic district and coming in and getting the permit. And just remember, in the future, exterior work requires
Definitely.
review. Interior work may require a building permit, but it's not the purview of this board. And the one main thing we don't review at all is paint. So paint color is entirely your decision. So it's not reviewed by the city, or, although you might need a permit. I don't want to speak for that.
yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I have a question. The application says like materials. What's the like material that's being used?
It's approved through state of Florida. Are you talking about the Hardy Backer, the weatherboard?
Yeah, it doesn't, I didn't
Yeah,
see Hardy board in
lap
here,
siding,
so.
the same thing that was on there, we're gonna replicate. So,
Is it, so what is on there right now is it's a V-shaped profile that's thin at the top and thicker at the bottom, the original wood?
no, it's just the rigid, no, no, actually, it was like a 1x6 that was originally on there, or 1x4 lap
The
siding.
original siding on the structure is the profile of the board is thin at the top, thicker at the bottom, and then overlays to create the wood lapping effect. It looks like what's on there now is a Hardy board, which is the same dimension top to bottom, and it's
Yeah.
just laid on top of each other. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I have a couple of questions of the applicant. Is that,
Please, go ahead, Mr. Bolton.
how many, Mr. Pratchet, this is an investment property?
No.
This is to live in?
Yes.
How many properties do you own in Tarpon Springs right now?
I own,
Sorry, I'm going to stop. I don't see how that's relevant to the application.
Because within the application, it states that he was not advised it was in a historic district and he was not aware. And my understanding is the applicant owns multiple properties and flips properties or has many investment properties that he's restored. And I
in a
would think
historic
that would,
district, never. I'm sorry to cut you off, but never in a historic district in my life.
But also, that's also not part of your criteria or something that you need to consider.
it's in the application, so that made it
I
relevant.
understand that it's in the application, but it's not relevant. Just because the applicant provides you with information, remember, it's not always relevant to the criteria that you're to consider.
Okay.
So whether or not he owns other properties in Tarpon Springs or knew or didn't know, it's not part of the criteria that you're considering as far as what the changes he make, if that meets that criteria or doesn't.
Okay. So just to clarify the not knowing that it was in a historic district, your agent did not disclose to you that it was in a historic district when you
No.
purchased the property, nor did the seller disclose that it was in a
No.
historic district. And this comes to my point previously, sorry that you're the example, that I believe that the city should let people know when they are purchasing a property and the title search comes in, that our residents and future residents deserve to be noticed that what they are purchasing is in a historic district. That's where I'm going with this. And I'm sorry that you have to be the example.
No, I agree.
This has come up time and time again on this board. It would take 5 minutes to reference a property that comes in for a title search or for a lien search to find out that's in a historic district, and we would not have applications like this, or potentially losing historic properties that are partially destroyed before an applicant realizes what the problem is. And I would like that noted as stated in the minutes.
Okay. And I appreciate your point, Mr. Bolton, and I think maybe we can discuss it when we get into board comments. But in the
Okay.
past, I was aware, some time ago when I served on the board before, once a year, the city sent out a letter to all, it was a form letter, but it said, just wanted to let you know you're in the historic district and blah, blah, blah. We can talk about it, off
Yeah, okay.
later after this application, but I think that may or may not have hit right because you may have just bought it and might not have gotten the letter, but we're going to talk about what we need to do. And I would just encourage you, the historic district is fairly large in this city. It goes all the way east to Ring. Doesn't come as far north as this building, but it goes all the way in the fruit salad area. So, if you're looking at other sites in there, be sure and check that with the city. Check that out before you invest, so that you're aware. Any
No
other
comments, no.
comments? Any other thing else you'd like to ask, Mr.
No, I agree, though. I agree. It should come up with the title company would be great. So,
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work, and we can
yeah,
talk about that because it's not
I can
really.
tell you how it works when
you
we
can
get to
put it
that
on a
point.
title.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, great.
that's
All right.
it. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you so
Thank you.
much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor or against this application today? Yes, sir, please come on up. Okay, please
Well,
just wait.
Yeah, if you could also just come up to the podium if you could be sworn in since you weren't here when we swore in the speakers. You could just raise your right hand for me. Do you swear affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
If you'd please give your name and address and then your comment.
I'm IRA Crowe, and I live at 120 Pineapple Street, sort of backing up to this property.
Okay, so you're to the east of him.
Yes,
Okay.
southeast. Yeah. Anyway, no, I just, this place has been a kind of a disaster ever since I bought my property a year and a half ago, so I was happy to see that someone purchased it and was going in to start taking care of it, cutting down some of the invasive shrubbery and everything else. So I stand behind. I'm happy that he's fixing this up, and whatever process needs to happen, I'm in support of him doing so.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's all.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, seeing no one rise to the board. Comments, motion?
I move that we accept the application as submitted on 109 South Spring Boulevard.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further conversation? The motion on the floor is to approve as submitted for 109 South Spring. Is there any further discussion among the board? Roll call, please.
Ms. Page,
Yes.
Mr. Bolton,
Yes.
Mrs. Terrapini.
Yes. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate you taking the time, and good luck with the project. No one else is here. Do we have any staff comments?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Board comments? Want to talk about that one issue?
I do.
Mr.
When
Bolton?
when a property sells, and there's a 99% of the time, I would say, a title company is involved in the state of Florida,
Right.
and a lien search is ordered. Most of the time, a municipal search is ordered because the person purchasing the property wants to make sure it's not encumbered by code enforcement issues or anything else from the city. It doesn't have any clouds on it. So that application comes somewhere into the city, and then a records search is done. I still do not understand why at that time when that comes in, that can't be noted to a buyer, because that's it is an encumbrance on the property. It is something that, it's a deed restriction. It is something, and it's imposed by the city. Therefore, I believe it's imperative on the city to disclose that. When they're asked by a title company to legally disclose if there is anything encumbering this property, for the city to not disclose that the property is in historic, it seems like that's a failure on our part, that we should disclose that property is encumbered by the guidelines of the historic preservation.
I would just say from a legal perspective, if the city did take it upon itself to do that, then the city would kind of be in a position where it would have to take it upon itself to let everyone in every zoning district know whatever zoning district they're in. It's really the property owner's responsibility to find that out before they purchase the property. It would be as if, some of the properties are located in zoning districts that have very special zoning. The city is not required to, when the title search is run, is not required to let those people know, hey, by the way, you've got these certain sidebacks or you have these certain conditions. And I understand that your point, it would be very helpful so that, might weed out some of the stuff on this board, or at least maybe some of the stuff on code enforcement. I just think from a legal perspective, if you're going to notify one group of people that live in the historic district or that are looking to purchase in the historic district, that those houses are in the historic district, the city then, by a process of due process and equal protection, well, not necessarily equal protection, but for certain reasons is going to need to let do that same service for everyone. And I think that
We
can
only
kind
have
of
one
be.
historic district.
But your historic district is because they're zoned that way. It's not.
No. You have whatever underlying zoning you happen to have, like my house happens to be in the historic district, and it's in one of the T zones in the special area plan.
Right.
So it's not, I could have T zoning and not be in the historic district, and I could have the T zoning and be in the historic district. So the two things operate totally
Right,
independently.
you're correct. You're correct. In zoning, I apologize, was a misnomer. I just thought it was easier to understand. But it's a factor of ordinances. It's not necessarily a factor of like code enforcement. It's not an encumbrance on the property. There are special restrictions, but that's the same for anyone that's in a different area. It's different because there are more, because it's the historic district.
I hear exactly what you're saying, and when it comes to
Leave that to the city to
when it comes-
decide, but I just want to kind of let you know the legal implications that might come up.
when it does come to properties that are encumbered by deed restrictions or homeowner associations, there are already vehicles in place for that to be disclosed.
Right.
There is no the vehicle in place for a purchaser is to have a title company request that information from the city. So that is the process that's legally in place for a buyer to do their due diligence.
Well,
So that they
keep
are
in-
trying to do that, and if they are asked, that should be disclosed.
But keep in mind, CC&Rs and those types of things are recorded with the county, so they're made public record. There's not, you're talking about ordinances that are fluid, that can change because the Board of Commissioners can change those types of things. So, and I think that the letter that gets sent out as a courtesy to those people from the city saying, remember, by the way, guys, you live in a historic district, is the city's way of saying, look, we're putting you on notice, although we're not required to do so, just because we want to do so for the benefit of our members, or our citizens.
So I know that, give me just a second. I know that this has been either discussed formally or informally in the past. I'm not sure what the outcome was of that, what kind of research was done, what kind of processes were in place at that time. So if you give me the opportunity to take a look into it again and find out exactly where those requests come from title search companies, and what happens to them, and what the process would be if we were to try to institute something like this, before we debate it further. And then I'll let everybody know in writing what it is.
Thank you.
I think that would be helpful, Michelle, because especially if, I would assume that probably those requests for whether there's any liens or not probably go to the clerk's office. And if she's using the same computer system as you are and typing in the address or the parcel number or both, if it's coming up on that screen and it's just a simple thing of sending a separate letter that, one letter says, here, you have no liens, and a separate letter says, and by the way, you're in the historic district, please contact such and such person, I think that, I don't want to overburden folks, but if it's something that
Let me
is
take a
already in
look.
the
Okay.
system, I think it would be helpful. And whatever disclaimer the city wants to put on it to say, please check this, completely by coming to the planning department or going online. I mean, it's all online. I believe the maps are online, so you can check. I don't know that you can check by.
that's the property owner's burden. Title companies do a
And
good job, but
and
that's
I've been
not-
in this business 38 years, and it happens all the time where property owners, you'll have property owners that'll be doing a commercial transaction and not even know what their zoning is. And I cannot believe it, but it happens. So I think anything we can do within reason to minimize that problem is good. And then I guess my second question would be, second question for Michelle is, when's the last time we sent out that letter? I had a sample of it from a while ago. And do we think maybe it's, that we should just do it every year and do it middle of January every year, run the tax roll. It doesn't have to be a specialized letter, just everybody gets the same form letter, and, just out in the mail. At least once a year, we're going to capture people's attention.
So I'll follow up on that request also and let you know how we'll be able to try to do that. I know that there are a couple of ideas about an education campaign regarding the historic district. Karen's already working on the new signage, the new street signs and things. So these are good ideas to look into, and I'll provide a written response on the title search process and also a written response on the annual letter.
Thank you.
think
We
I-
had multiple discussions about this in years past. Multiple staff, unfortunately inherited that. I mean, it's been years, but it did come back that was going to be done. And so we thought it was being done. And then we found that it wasn't being done, that there was staffing issues, and it just never really got done. So
Okay.
now we're back to this,
So the last time the letter went out was in 16. I don't think that we actually sent out a letter in 17, but it was sent out in 16.
Great. And is that something that you can just regurgitate the same letter? You don't?
Yeah, we just got to rerun the roll.
Right. I mean, the letter's you're pretty happy with the letter. Maybe you could send.
Well, the letter needs to be modified because with it, they sent out the application, that type of thing, and that's not the intention. We just need to reference the website so people can go in and do that, because it's too much paper to be going out. A single sheet's a different story. The other option is to boil it down to a simple message to go out on postcards and to send out the postcards with the website. That's another opportunity. I mean, we already send postcards out for the application, so it's something that we can consider. Obviously, a postcard's going to be a much cheaper option than a letter, but that's something that we can internally talk about. But yeah, there is a form letter that was generated. It just needs to be edited for, instead of see the attached application, see the website with the map attached.
I definitely support minimizing the paper and references to the website, and maybe even a list of here's all the things you can find on the website, a map of the historic district, an application should you think you want to apply. I think it's too much information, frankly, to be put in a postcard.
I agree.
And maybe at the next meeting, you could just bring back the letter that you guys, the standard letter. And if you have time to edit it for that, great. If not, we'll talk about it in March and then let you guys send it.
Okay.
Other comments?
That was all I had. I'm glad we brought that up.
I had couple things. In the category of less paper, I know that you guys have typically sent these quadrangle maps. I personally don't get any value out of them. So if the rest of the board
I don't.
sees
it does
fit, maybe
nothing
that's
for me.
one part of your application that you could eliminate. It's not a lot, but every little bit helps.
Great.
The other thing is, if we do make revisions to the minutes like we did tonight and we did last month, would you send the revised type minutes out with the packet, please, to everybody? So like we made revisions tonight, we don't ever get, at least so far, as long as I've been on the board, which has been a big 2 months or 3 months, I'd like to have the final set of minutes for my records, just so after you revise them after tonight's meeting, then with the March agenda, send out the revised one and then the ones for this.
Okay.
And then I don't believe that an appeal was filed on the Cultural Center, Old City Hall, so that I guess we'll see what the applicant decides to do with regard to that. And then the last thing I had is actually for the staff. I'll just pass these to you guys too. I'll pass that down. The Department of State generally does grant workshops. Fortunately, they're doing it at the end of this month in Newport Richey, so that's pretty close. And the reason I bring it up is, there is great money for historic preservation, and as a CLG, you don't have to match the grant money. So if you ask for $20,000, you don't have to match it with another 20. But frankly, I'm concerned that $20,000 is not going to be enough for the design guidelines. And I appreciate that the commission wants to budget that, and maybe that could start the process. But I think that we might want to consider going for a grant, and especially cities that are, the CLGs have their own pot of money, number one. And number two, because this city hasn't applied for a preservation grant in some time, a well-written, solid application for something like design guidelines is the kind of thing the state likes to fund. So I just pass it out to let you guys know that workshop is coming up. I didn't register online, but I looked at the registration format, and it looked like you could even ask to have a one-on-one meeting with one of the grant staff, since they're here from Tallahassee. So if you had specific questions, you could say, look, you guys still like the fund design guidelines? Do you not? What do I need to put in it? What's
Sure.
the process? But I think it would be worth our time, because honestly, that $20,000 is going to run out pretty quickly. And if we could do the grant application, I'm happy to help. I've written a lot of grants. I know the city's previous grant person is retired now. Kathy Monahan used to write most of those, but I personally have written grants to the state. I'm happy to help with that, or review or edit, and I'm sure the rest of the board would jump in too. I just think it's something that we need to consider, especially if we're going to have any kind of meaningful public involvement on the design guidelines and discussion. You're going to eat up that $20,000 by the time you do a couple of drafts and have a discussion among this board, and then we want to get the owners of the properties involved. We'll be well down, have spent all of our money. Still want to publish it and draw it, make it look nice, and all the other things, the goals that you guys have. So.
Great, thank you. I'll check it out.
And then the last thing about the design guidelines, you guys, at the last meeting, you said you were working on the RFP. Can you give us an idea what the schedule is for that?
At this time, I cannot give you an idea on the schedule. I need to go to procurement training, which is 1 week from now.
Uh-huh.
And after that, we'll be able to start working on the RFP and put that together for you all to look at before we put it out. So
Procurement training within the city.
Correct.
Okay.
So I anticipate maybe April, you seeing the draft of the request for proposals.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they want them to consider in the design guidelines, since we have an early meeting, if there's anything we want to talk
I
about
have one
that?
question.
Mr.
Our
Bolten?
April meeting will be the Monday after Easter,
Calendar. Kim?
American Easter or Greek Easter?
American Easter.
Is it the second?
It's the second.
Yes.
The
April
first is on a
2nd?
Sunday. April 2nd is Monday. Just for the record, I would like an excused absence from that meeting.
Would you like
I
to
may-
move the meeting?
Yes, I
Okay.
didn't realize.
So
that
is that,
was a big
would that be a problem for the staff if we move it from April 2nd to April the 9th?
Not a problem for me, but
We'll just have to check and make sure that there's no performance scheduled or anything.
Okay,
Generally, we try to have them leave this Mondays and Tuesdays open, but we'll just have to verify.
well, it sounds like we might have 2 board members absent, so then we wouldn't have a quorum, potentially. Well, I guess
Well,
we still have 5
Miss
people.
Bean and Miss Johnson were here, then that would be 3. But it's always better. to have a full board. Okay, so if you check and let us know. Any other comments? Staff comments? Board? Anything else? Okay,
so,
we stand adjourned at 7:12. Thank you.
Meeting.
I'm gonna put that in my calendar.
And it's free. You can take this because
What?
you have to go online and register.
I know, but I have to, I'll be teaching that day.
Oh.
It's 10 a.m., right?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm gonna put it on my calendar because sometimes, like, well, like today, I teach online, so I teach kids in Virginia.
Oh.
I teach kids in